Look, what's happening with American corn right now is absolutely insane. Like, genuinely concerning. The Trump administration is going hard on immigration crackdown, which, whatever your politics, is creating a labor crisis for farmers. Real crisis. And now they've shut down the agency that literally distributes bailout funding. Classic government efficiency. Trump's teasing another bailout. But here's the thing. We need to stop treating symptoms and start fixing root causes. Bailouts are just band-aids on a broken system. They don't solve anything long-term.
So, I'm talking to Katrina Markle in Saunders County. And she's interviewing Dan Wesley, veteran farmer, knows his stuff, been doing this his whole life, and he's saying what I've been saying about first principles, thinking we need more markets.
Not subsidies, not bailouts. Markets. It's not rocket science. Well, actually, rocket science is easier than fixing government agriculture policy, but you get the point. The solution isn't throwing money at the problem. It's creating sustainable demand. It's about building systems that work without constant government intervention. Here's where it gets wild. Something completely unprecedented is happening in North American food trade. Countries that have been buying U.S. corn for decades are now straight up rejecting shipments. Rejecting them. Meanwhile, Canada is signing billion-dollar export deals left and right. The reaction in Washington? Reportedly intense and angry. Translation: they're freaking out. Panic mode. And they should be, because this could fundamentally restructure global trade architecture. We're watching a real-time shift in economic power that most people aren't even paying attention to yet. This is the kind of thing that historians will point to decades from now. Let me give you context. For 20 years, the United States has been the most reliable corn exporter on planet Earth. Countries depended on American supply like they depend on smartphones. Total dominance. We basically owned the market. Something like 30–40% of global corn exports came from the U.S. But in the last few months, total reversal. U.S. corn shipments are being turned away, questioned, delayed at ports. Some countries set quality standards, moisture level, tariff issues. Others are just like, yeah, the price-to-quality ratio doesn't work anymore. We found better options. And you know what? They're not wrong. When you're a buyer and you have options, you optimize for reliability and value. That's just rational decision-making. You can't blame them for acting in their own interest. This is creating massive frustration in U.S. agriculture. Farmers are already getting crushed by rising fuel costs, fertilizer prices going parabolic, shipping costs through the roof, and now demand is slowing? At literally the worst possible time? It's like a perfect storm of terrible timing. These are multi-generational farms we're talking about. Families who've been doing this for decades, maybe centuries. And they're being squeezed from every direction simultaneously. Input costs up, output prices down, labor shortages, and now export markets collapsing. But here's what's absolutely fascinating. While the U.S. is dealing with this mess, Canada is executing flawlessly. They've quietly, and I mean quietly, stepped in and secured massive long-term contracts. We're talking billions of dollars. Plural billions. Buyers in Asia, Middle East, Europe. Countries that used to automatically buy American are now signing decade-long deals with Canada. How did this happen? How did we miss this? Simple. First principles. Canada's offering consistent grain quality, lower dispute rates at ports, smoother West Coast shipping routes, stable trade relations, no drama, no surprise tariffs, no geopolitical uncertainty, no tweets that change policy overnight. Buyers are saying, and this is their exact reasoning, that Canadian corn offers less trouble and more reliability. In other words, they're optimizing for minimal friction in the supply chain. Smart, efficient. That's what any rational economic actor would do. Think about it like this. If you're running a food processing company in South Korea or a feed operation in Saudi Arabia, you don't want surprises. You want predictable supply chains. You want to know that when you order corn, it arrives on time, meets specifications, and doesn't come with political complications. You're planning production months in advance. You need certainty. Canada's providing that. The US? Not so much right now. We've become the unreliable partner. This isn't just about crops. This is about fundamental shifts in global trade architecture. Countries don't want single supplier dependency anymore. They learned that lesson hard during COVID supply chain disruptions. Remember when PPE supply chains collapsed? Same principle. They want options. They want stability. They want predictable partners who don't create geopolitical drama every news cycle. They're diversifying their supply chains like investors diversify portfolios. Basic risk management. Supply chain resilience 101. For the US, this is a critical warning signal. Rejected shipments don't just impact quarterly profits, they destroy trust. And trust, in global trade relationships, is like reputation in engineering. Takes years to build, seconds to destroy, nearly impossible to rebuild. Once you break it, good luck getting it back. Buyers have long memories. They remember who was reliable when they needed them and who wasn't. They remember who screwed them over with last-minute tariffs or quality issues. Canada's playing the long game here. By providing consistent quality and transparent pricing, basically doing what any well-run company should do, they're gaining structural influence in agricultural markets. And that influence compounds over time. This isn't temporary market share gain. This is relationship building that could last generations. Once you establish yourself as the reliable partner, once buyers restructure their entire supply chains around your product, that's incredibly sticky. Switching costs become massive. Infrastructure gets built. Relationships deepen. That's hard to undo. This could reshape the entire North American trade dynamic for decades. We're potentially watching the beginning of a major power shift in agricultural exports. And most policymakers are still treating this like a temporary blip. They're not seeing the strategic implications. So what does this mean for regular people? Economics 101 time. If U.S. farmers face sustained weak demand, they'll cut production next year. When production falls, prices rise. Your grocery bill goes up. Your meat costs more because animal feed costs more. Everything downstream gets affected. Corn is in everything: cereals, sweeteners, feed for livestock. For global buyers, shifting to Canada might stabilize prices if Canadian supply can scale with demand. Big if. Can Canadian farmers expand production fast enough to meet this new demand? Do they have the infrastructure, the logistics capacity, the port capacity? These are real constraints. For North America broadly, everything's on the table now. Tariffs, shipping routes, trade agreements all getting renegotiated. When one country loses ground, while another gains, the entire strategic framework changes. The USMCA trade agreement might need serious revision. Port infrastructure investments might shift north. Rail networks might need reconfiguration. This isn't just about corn, it's about the future competitive positioning of both countries in global agriculture. Politically, this becomes massive during election seasons. Economic pressure on farmers has always been a third rail issue in American politics. The Farm Belt states, critical electoral territory. Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Illinois, these aren't just agricultural states, they're swing states. When international buyers start rejecting your shipments, leaders feel immediate heat. That's why reports say the mood in Washington is tense. Declining exports aren't just economic problems, they're political landmines. Expect this to become a major campaign issue. Both parties will be scrambling to address it. The critical questions moving forward: can the U.S. fix quality and tariff concerns fast enough? Are we even capable of moving at that speed anymore? Our regulatory systems aren't exactly known for agility. Will buyers continue shifting to Canada? Every month that passes with Canada as the reliable partner makes switching back harder. Is this a temporary blip or the start of permanent restructuring in global agricultural power dynamics? I think we know the answer. Here's my take. This is fixable, but it requires fundamental changes. Not incremental tweaks. Fundamental restructuring. We need to streamline quality control processes, reduce bureaucratic friction, make our supply chains more efficient, invest in port infrastructure, stabilize trade policy so buyers can plan long-term, stop the constant tariff uncertainty that makes us unreliable partners, create regulatory clarity, incentivize innovation in agricultural logistics. But here's the hard truth. Fixing this requires political will. It requires agencies to work together efficiently. It requires long-term thinking over short-term political wins. Does anyone think our current system is capable of that? I'm skeptical. One thing is absolutely certain: the world's corn market is changing faster than anyone predicted. Both the US and Canada will play major roles in what happens next, but right now, Canada's executing and the US is scrambling. They showed up prepared while we're still figuring out the playbook. They did their homework. They built relationships. They invested in quality and consistency. We need to fix this. Not with bailouts, not with subsidies, not with protectionism, with fundamental improvements to quality, logistics, and trade policy. Otherwise, we're watching real-time market disruption where America loses ground to a competitor that simply showed up with a better product and better service. That's capitalism working exactly as it should, rewarding efficiency and reliability. The market is speaking. Question is, are we listening? And that should concern everyone, because once you lose market dominance, getting it back is exponentially harder than maintaining it. Ask anyone who's lost market share to a competitor. The comeback is brutal. Stay tuned. This story is developing rapidly, and the implications for global trade are enormous. This could be the canary in the coal mine for broader shifts in American economic competitiveness. If we can't figure out corn exports, what else are we missing?